The children were crying. Not screaming, just crying. The kind of crying that sounds like confusion more than fear. A friend stood outside the door. She could hear them two voices, one barely able to form words. But she couldn't get in. She called 911. And when officers finally entered, they found the children wandering on a different floor from where their parents lay. The couple had been dead for hours. This is Columbus, Ohio, December 30th, 2025. Just over a week ago. This isn't a story about how violence happens. It's about what happens in the space between when a person who is always on time doesn't show up. When a home becomes a crime scene. When two children survive, something they're too young to explain. There's a hooded figure on surveillance video, walking through an alley at 3 a.m. There are crime cameras directly across the street. There are dozens of cameras in this neighborhood. But 1 week later, no arrests, no suspects named. And to children growing up without any memory of the night that took both their parents. The couple was married in this house. 5 years earlier, they exchanged vows in the same room where police would later find their bodies. If it could happen to them. Spencer Tepe was a dentist, 30-7 years old. He worked an hour and a half away in Athens, Ohio. Every morning, he left at 6:30 for the drive. On December 30th, he never left the house. His boss called 911 at 8:58 a.m. He is always on time, the man said. Always. That's not hyperbole. That's not exaggeration. Everyone who knew Spencer, his employer, his family, his colleagues, they all use the same word, reliable. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called behavioral signatures, patterns that become so consistent they define you. When Spencer's boss called 911 and said, he is always on time, he was describing a behavioral signature. That consistency had two effects. 1, it made Spencer reliable, trustworthy, someone people depended on. That's a strength in professional and personal life. 2, it made his absence immediately alarming. When someone is that consistent, deviation from the pattern signals crisis. But there's a third effect that's less obvious. Behavioral signatures make you predictable. If someone wanted to harm Spencer, they'd know exactly where he'd be and when. Home at night. Back in the evening. That's not victim blaming. That's just the reality of routine. The things that make us stable routines, schedules, predictability also make us vulnerable. We don't know if Spencer's routine played a role in what happened. But we know it played a role in how quickly people realized something was wrong. His wife, Monique, wasn't answering her phone either. That, the boss said, was the more concerning thing. Monique was 30-9, background in childhood education. Friends described her as someone who made you feel instantly at home. She baked, she planned. She brought people together. Her brother-in-law would later say her warmth defined her. She was patient and joyful. Her whole life revolved around her children. They had 2 children, a 4-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old son. They lived in Weinland Park, a neighborhood in Columbus with a complicated history. In the 1990s, it was one of the most violent places in the city, the headquarters of a gang called the Short North Posse, responsible for more than 20 murders. But by 2025, it was changing. Coffee shops, a new elementary school, families pushing strollers past, row houses that once held crack dens. The city had even installed crime cameras. one directly across the street from the Tepe home. It didn't help. When the officer arrived at 9:22 a.m. on December 30th, no one answered the door. The house was quiet. At 9:56 a.m., a friend arrived. A coworker from Spencer's dental office. Someone who knew him well enough to drive 90 minutes to check on him. She stood outside the door, and she heard something, crying. Children crying. She called 911 again. "I can hear kids inside," she said. "And I think I heard one yell. But we can't get in." The dispatcher asked her to stay on the line. Officers were already en route. But the friend kept listening, and the crying didn't stop. When police forced entry, they found the children first. A 4-year-old girl, a 1-year-old boy. They were physically unharmed, but they'd been alone in that house with their parents, dead upstairs for somewhere between 5 and 8 hours. Officers brought a therapy dog to the scene. Not a drug dog, not a search dog. A therapy dog for the children. The children were placed with relatives. At 10:11 a.m., Columbus Fire Department medics pronounced both Spencer and Monique deceased. Spencer had been shot multiple times. Monique at least once, in the chest. There were no signs of forced entry. No weapon at the scene, no signs of robbery. Police ruled out murder-suicide immediately, which means someone else was in that house. Here's where it gets strange. Weinland Park isn't just any neighborhood. By 2025, it was one of the most surveilled areas in Columbus. Residents had asked the city to install crime cameras back in 2011. They wanted to feel safe. They wanted evidence if something happened. The city complied. Cameras at major intersections. One camera directly across from the Tepe home, so close you could see their front door. Residents say there are more than 24 cameras within a block radius. Ring doorbells, private security systems. Cameras everywhere, so when Spencer and Monique were killed between 2 and 5 a.m. on December 30th, according to police investigators, had more footage than in most homicide cases. And yet, 1 week later, no arrests. That tells you something about the limits of surveillance. You can capture everything and understand nothing. Seeing isn't solving. On January 5th, 1 week after the murders, Columbus police released surveillance footage. Just under 30 seconds. Black and white. Timestamp between 2 and 5 a.m. A figure walks through an alley near the Tepe home. The alley is snow dash covered. The figure moves slowly. Dark hoodie, hood up. Light-colored pants, head bowed. Hands tucked into pockets. They walk like someone who's cold or weighted down by something. Police call this person a person of interest, not a suspect. Legally, that means we want to talk to you. We're not accusing you. But we'd very much like to know why you were walking through this alley at 3 a.m. on the night two people were murdered 50 feet away. The video went public. It was shared thousands of times. Columbus police asked for tips, and then silence. As of today, January 6th, no one has been arrested. No suspect has been named. That figure in the hoodie could be the killer, or a neighbor coming home late, or someone who has no idea they're even a person of interest. Here's what we know for certain. Spencer Tepe, a dentist who was always on time, didn't show up for work. Monique Tepe, a mother whose life revolved around her children, didn't answer her phone. They're to children ages 4 and one were found crying in their home, unharmed but alone for hours. Their parents were upstairs, dead. Shot. There was no forced entry. No weapon, no robbery. Someone walked in or was letting sometime in the deepest part of the night. Did what they came to do and walked out. With 24 cameras watching. To understand how it happened, you have to go back. To before that morning. To the life this couple built. To the neighborhood they chose. To the small details that, in hindsight, might have meant something. Because what happened in that house didn't start at 3 a.m. on December 30th. It started long before anyone was paying attention. Spencer Tepe grew up in Mason, Ohio, a suburb of Cincinnati. Mason High School, class of 2007. The kind of place where everyone knows your name and your graduation makes the local paper. He went to Ohio State for biology, then dental school, then hundreds, literally hundreds of hours of continuing education after that. Dental implants, advanced techniques. He didn't just want to be good. He wanted to be excellent. Healthcare, professionals including dentists face unique occupational stressors. You're responsible for people's physical well-being. Every decision has consequences. You're working in small margins of error. Add to that the business side, managing appointments, insurance claims, patient complaints, staff schedules. Small private practices operate on tight margins. Spencer's boss said he was always on time, that he'd contact us if there were any issues. That level of reliability suggests someone who took his professional responsibilities seriously. Maybe too seriously. Research on perfectionism in healthcare shows it's a double-edged sword. It makes you excellent at your job, but it also means you carry the weight of every mistake, every delay, every less than perfect outcome. We don't know if Spencer was a perfectionist, but we know he invested hundreds of hours in continuing education beyond what was required. That's someone who wanted to be the best. And people who hold themselves to that standard often have trouble turning it off when they come home. He volunteered with Big Brothers Big Sisters, mentored kids who didn't have stable father figures. He spoke fluent Spanish and used it with his patients. In every description from his boss, from his family, from friends, the same word appears: reliable. That consistency wasn't just professional, it was personal. It was who he was. Monique was an educator, background in childhood education. Friends described her as someone who made you feel instantly at home. She baked, she planned. She brought people together. Her brother-in-law later said her warmth defined her. She was patient and joyful. Her whole life revolved around her children. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes with full-time caregiving. It's not just the physical labor, though, that's real. It's the emotional labor, regulating your own feelings so you can help a 4-year-old regulate theirs. Staying patient through the 15th why. Keeping a 1-year-old safe while also keeping them stimulated. Sociologists call it invisible labor, the work that nobody sees because it happens at home. It doesn't come with a paycheck or performance reviews or professional development. Monique had a background in childhood education. That means she brought professional-level skill to parenting. But it also means she understood, intellectually, how much more there was to do, how much better she could be doing it. That kind of knowledge can be a burden. When you know what optimal looks like, adequate starts to feel like failure. We don't know if Monique felt that way, but we know the people who loved her described her as patient and joyful. and maintaining patience, and joy through the relentlessness of raising two small children that takes everything you have. When she and Spencer had kids, a daughter, then a son, neighbors said you could hear the laughter coming from their house. Not all the time, just regularly. The sound of a family that liked being together. Anyone who's raised a 1-year-old knows you're not sleeping through the night. You're not getting uninterrupted time to think. You're in survival mode, feeding, changing, soothing, repeating. Add a 4-year-old who has big feelings and limited vocabulary to express demand. You have what developmental psychologists call a high-demand caregiving period. This isn't a stressor in the sense of problem. It's a stressor in the sense of using all available physical and emotional resources. Psychologists who study work-life balance talk about commuter families, situations where one partner travels significant distances for work. 3 hours a day in a car means 3 hours away from family. For parents of young children, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, that's 3 hours where one partner shoulders the full caregiving load. This doesn't mean there was strain in the Tepe marriage. By all accounts, they were happy. But it does mean there was a structure to their days. Spencer left early, worked all day, came home tired. Monique managed to small children alone, all day, every day. That's not dysfunction. That's just the reality of modern dual-role families trying to balance professional ambition with domestic life. And it means that on Sunday night, December 29th, both of them were probably tired. Ready for Monday, ready for routine. They married in 20-1. The ceremony wasn't at a church or a venue. It was in their home. The video from that day shows Spencer in a suit, grinning at Monique in white, laughing. They're standing in the living room of a house on North 4th Street in Columbus, Weinland Park. The same house where, 4 years later, police would find their bodies. Think about that. The place where you exchange vows, where you promise forever, where your families gather and celebrate. The most sacred domestic space you can create. And then it becomes the place where someone ends your life. There's no separation, no distance. The wedding and the murder happened in the same 4 walls. People have asked, why Weinland Park? Spencer worked in Athens, an hour and a half away. They could have lived anywhere along that route. Somewhere quieter, somewhere with a lower crime rate. Weinland Point 5 had a violent crime rate 113% higher than the national average. In the 1990s and early 2000s, it was the operational center for the Short North Passia gang responsible for more than 20 murders. But by the time Spencer and Monique married there, the neighborhood was in transition. New investment, community gardens, a Schonbaum family center, an elementary school. The crime rate was dropping. The city had installed crime cameras in 2011 at the community's request. Residents wanted to feel safe. They wanted to reclaim their streets. Research on neighborhood violence shows that even when crime rates are declining, the psychological impact of living in a historically violent area persists. It's called ambient fear, the background awareness that something could happen, even if it's statistically unlikely. For families with young children, this creates a specific kind of stress. Parents in high-crime neighborhoods report higher vigilance behaviors, checking locks multiple times, monitoring who's outside, restricting children's outdoor play. But there's a paradox. Some families intentionally choose to stay in or move to transforming neighborhoods. They believe in community investment. They want to be part of the solution, not the exodus. So maybe that's why the Tepes chose Weinland Park. Maybe they believed in what the neighborhood was becoming. Maybe they wanted to be part of the transformation. Or maybe they just liked the house. We don't know, and now we can't ask them. What we do know is this: by December 2025, Spencer and Monique had 2 children. A 4-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old son. And a golden doodle named after a Bengals player. Spencer was a huge fan. Spencer left for work early every morning. 6:30 a.m., out the door, 90-minute drive to Athens. He'd work all day cleanings, root canals, implants. Then drive home. Monique was home with the kids. Preschool schedules, nap times. The 1,000 small negotiations of raising a toddler and an infant. Friends said they traveled when they could, that they loved to laugh, that they were looking forward to their 5-year anniversary in January. They had no idea they had 3 weeks left. Here's what makes the wedding detail even more haunting. When police arrived on December 30th, they didn't have to break in. There was no forced entry. The door wasn't kicked in, no windows smashed. Which means one of 3 things. 1, the door was unlocked. Someone walked in during the night, while the family slept. 2, the killer had a key, someone with access. 3, Spencer or Monique opened the door. They saw who it was, and they let them in. Psychologists who study home security talk about trust boundaries. Your home is your most intimate space. You lock the door at night because you're vulnerable when you sleep. You're trusting that the lock will keep danger out. For parents with young children, that trust is even more important. You're not just protecting yourself. You're protecting people who can't protect themselves. So when there's no forced entry in a homicide case, it tells us something about trust. Either the victims trusted the wrong person, they opened the door for someone who seemed safe but wasn't. Or they didn't get a chance to make that choice, the door was unlocked, or someone had a key. Both scenarios are violations, but they're different kinds of violations. Opening the door for someone means you made a decision based on information you had. You trusted your judgment, and your judgment failed you. Finding out someone had unauthorized access means you never had control. The boundary you thought existed didn't. We don't know which scenario this was. But for the family, for anyone who knew Spencer and Monique, both possibilities are haunting. Think about that in the context of the wedding. They built this home into a sanctuary, a place of love, a place where they felt safe enough to marry, to raise children, to build a future. And someone walked in or was let in and destroyed it all. The police won't say which theory they're working with. They won't say if they think the couple knew their killer. But they've ruled out one possibility. This wasn't a murder-suicide. Someone else was in that house. Someone who either had a key, or was invited in, or found an unlocked door. December 29th, 2025, a Sunday night. The night before Spencer didn't show up for work. We don't know what they did that evening. Police haven't released details. No one has shared a timeline of their last hours of normalcy. But we know what happened after they went to bed. Somewhere between 2 and 5 in the morning, someone entered their home, went upstairs to their bedroom, and fired multiple gunshots. Spencer was shot multiple times. Monique at least once, in the chest. In a different room, their children slept, or cried, or lay silent and confused. We don't know which, They're too young to tell us. But we know they survived. And that's where the story gets even stranger. Between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m., no one, Spencer and Monique, were dead in their bedroom. Their children were somewhere in the house. And the person who killed them was gone. The weapon was gone too. Police never found it at the scene, which means the killer took it with them. Conscious enough, calm enough to remove evidence. The sun came up Monday morning, December 30th, in Athens, Ohio, at the dental office where Spencer worked. The front desk started getting worried around 8:15. He should have been there by then. He should have called if he was running late. By 8:58, his boss, Dr. Mark Valrose, was on the phone with 911. Valrose told the dispatcher he is always on time and he would contact us if there were any issues. He paused. I don't know how else to say this, but we are, This is very out of character for him. We can't get in touch with his wife either, which is the more concerning thing. The dispatcher sent an officer to the Tepe home. Just a welfare check, make sure everything's okay. At 9:22 a.m., an officer knocked. No one answered. The house was quiet. At 9:56 a.m., a friend arrived. A coworker from the Athens dental office. Someone who knew Spencer well enough to drive 90 minutes to check on him. She stood outside the door, and she heard something, crying. Not screaming, not shouting. Just crying, children crying. She called 911 again. I can hear kids inside, she said. And I think I heard one yell. But we can't get in. The dispatcher asked her to stay on the line. Officers were already en route. But the friend kept listening. And the crying didn't stop. When police forced entry, they found the children first. A 4-year-old girl, a 1-year-old boy. In a different area of the house from the bedroom where their parents had been killed. They were physically unharmed. But they'd been alone in that house, with their parents dead upstairs, for somewhere between 5 and 8 hours. Think about that. The older child is 4. Old enough to know something is wrong. Old enough to call for her parents and get no answer. Old enough to hear the baby crying and not know what to do. But not old enough to open the front door. Not old enough to call for help. Not old enough to understand what death is. The younger child is 1. Barely verbal, probably hungry. Probably scared because his sister is scared. And somewhere in that house, in a bedroom they weren't in, their parents lay dead. The children didn't see them. Or maybe they did. We don't know. They're too young to tell us in any detail. But they were there for hours. Columbus police brought a therapy dog to the scene. Not a drug dog, not a search dog. A therapy dog, Sergeant Joe Albert later told reporters. When you have young children who potentially had a family member or to that are deceased inside the same residence as them, our dogs are doing a great job. The officers do a great job of accompanying those kids and just giving them something different to think about. So it's for the mental health of the children. The children were placed with relatives, along with the family golden doodle. At 10:11 a.m., the Columbus Fire Department pronounced both Spencer and Monique deceased. Here's what haunts investigators and everyone else who hears this story. Why were the children unharmed? This wasn't a case where they were at a neighbor's house or with a babysitter. They were in the same house during the murders. Probably sleeping, but we don't know for certain. The killer had to know they were there. A 4-year-old and a 1-year-old don't move silently. They don't hide effectively. If you're in that house, you are them. So why leave them alive? 3 possibilities. 1. The children weren't targets. The killer came for Spencer and Monique specifically. The children were irrelevant. This hints assassinations, murders. The goal is specific. Anyone else present is a complication, not an objective. 2. The killer showed restraint, not mercy. They drew a line. Adults, yes. Children, no. Research on violent offenders shows that even people willing to commit murder often have boundaries. I'd never hurt a kid is one of the most common. It's not rational there, still committing murder, but it's a psychological boundary many hold. 3. The killer never encountered the children. The kids were in a different room, stayed quiet, and the killer left without ever knowing they were there. This is possible, especially if the murders happened quickly. In and out, adults neutralized. Exit before anyone wakes. We don't know which. Police haven't said, maybe they don't know either. But whichever it is, it tells us something about what happened in that house. There's another detail that matters. Spencer was shot multiple times. Monique was shot at least once, in the chest. That's not the same. That's not equal. Multiple shots suggests intensity, anger or determination. Making sure. A single shot can mean different things. Efficiency. Or secondary, targeting. She wasn't the goal, but she was a witness. We don't know which, but the difference matters. Because it suggests someone came into that house with a specific intent. And Spencer was the primary focus. Or it suggests the sequence. Spencer first, then Monique. Spencer fought back. Monique didn't have time. Either way, this wasn't random. This wasn't a panicked intruder who shot wildly and fled. Forensic psychologists look at crime scenes to understand perpetrator behavior. Not personality, not diagnosis. Just, what does this tell us about how they thought and acted? Taking the weapon tells us consciousness of evidence. Either they brought the gun specifically for this purpose and planned to remove it, or they brought it for protection and decided mid-crime to take it. No, forced entry tells us either access was easy, door unlocked, authorized, they had a key, or granted victims opened the door. This wasn't a smash, dash and dash grab. No, robbery tells us the goal wasn't financial. This was about the violence itself, or about removing these specific people, or about sending a message. Children unharmed tells us restraint taught boundaries. A line they wouldn't cross, or a target they didn't include. Put those together, and you get a profile not of a person, but of a mindset. Someone who came to that house with a specific goal. Someone who knew how to get in. Someone who did what they came to do. Someone who drew a line at children. And someone calm enough to take the weapon and leave. That's not a crime of passion. That's not a panicked burglar who shoots when surprised. That's controlled, planned, purposeful, which makes it even more confusing that no one saw it coming. By 10:30 a.m. on December 30th, Weinland Park was a crime scene. Yellow tape, forensic vans, detectives knocking on doors, news cameras setting up across the street. The Columbus Police Homicide Unit took over. Detective Miller, a team of investigators trying to answer a very simple question. Who did this? 1 week later, they still don't have an answer. But they have something. Surveillance footage. A figure in a hoodie walking through an alley between 2 and 5 a.m. The exact window when Spencer and Monique were killed. The problem is, having footage and knowing who someone is are two different things. And that's where the story gets complicated. Detective work in real life doesn't look like television. There's no montage where someone points at a whiteboard and suddenly everything clicks. There's no 48-hour deadline. There's no confession in the interrogation room after a perfectly timed piece of evidence appears. There's just a lot of questions and very few answers. Here's what Columbus police knew by the end of December 30th. 2 victims: Spencer Tepe, 30-7, Monique Tepe, 39. Both shot to death in their bedroom sometime between 2 and 5 a.m. 2 children, unharmed, found in the house. No weapon at the scene. No signs of forced entry, no signs of robbery. A neighborhood full of cameras. Crime cameras installed by the city. Ring doorbells, private security systems. Maybe 24 cameras within a block of the Tepe home. And here's what they didn't know. Why, how they got in, where they went after, whether the couple was targeted or just unlucky, whether the killer was someone they knew or a stranger. Everything else was a theory. Theory 1, this was random. Wrong place, wrong time. Weinland Park has a history. In the 1990s and early 2000s, it was the base of operations for the Short North Posse gang that controlled drug trafficking in the area and was responsible for more than 20 murders. By 2017, the last of the gang's leaders went to prison. But the violence didn't disappear overnight. The neighborhood still had one of the highest violent crime rates in Columbus. So maybe this was a gang thing. Mistaken address, wrong house. Retaliation that's hit the wrong family. The problem with this theory, no forced entry. If it's random, why does the door open so easily? And why leave the children alive? Random violence doesn't usually show restraint. Theory 2, this was targeted. Someone came for Spencer and Monique specifically. No forced entry. Maybe they had a key. Maybe Spencer or Monique opened the door because they recognized who it was. Multiple shots to Spencer, 1 to Monique. That suggests focus. Spencer was the goal. Monique was collateral, or a witness who had to be silenced. The children were left alive. That suggests boundaries. This person came for the adults, not the family. The problem with this theory, who? Spencer and Monique had no known enemies. No workplace disputes. No financial troubles publicly disclosed. No threats reported. Family describes them as warm, welcoming, community-oriented. If someone targeted them, why? Criminologists distinguish between expressive violence and instrumental violence. Expressive violence is emotional. It erupts from anger, jealousy, hurt. It's usually preceded by escalating conflict, arguments, threats, prior incidents. There's a history. Instrumental violence is goal-oriented. It's done to achieve something, eliminate a witness, send a message, remove an obstacle. It can appear to come out of nowhere because the conflict wasn't visible. In cases of expressive violence, especially domestic homicides, there are almost always warning signs. Prior police calls, friends who heard arguments, family members who noticed bruises or controlling behavior. Here, there's none of that. No documented history of conflict. That doesn't mean the relationship was perfect, no relationship is. But it suggests that if someone close to them did this, the motive wasn't visible domestic conflict. It would have to be something else. Financial.secret. Hidden even from people who knew them well. Or it wasn't someone close to them at all. Theory 3. Wrong house, but not in the gang sense. In the gentrification sense, Weinland Park was changing fast in the 2020s. New investment. Rising property values. Long-time residents getting priced out, new residents moving in. Spencer and Monique were educated professionals. Spencer was a dentist. They could afford to live in many places. They chose Weinland Park. Sociologists who study gentrification talk about symbolic displacement, the feeling among longtime residents that their neighborhood is being taken from them, not just economically but culturally. When new residents arrive, especially if they're wealthier, whiter, more educated than the existing community, it can create resentment. Not because the new residents are bad people, but because they represent change that wasn't chosen. In extreme cases, this resentment can become targeted. Property damage, harassment, even violence, though there. Maybe someone saw them as symbols. Gentrifiers, people who didn't belong, and decided to send a message. The problem with this theory, there's no message. No graffiti. No note. No manifesto. If you're making a political point, you usually make it clear. And again, the children, why pardon them if you're trying to terrorize a demographic? Theory 4. Someone they knew. Someone they trusted enough to let into their home at what? Menos 2 3 a.m. A friend having a crisis. A family member, a neighbor. Someone who knew the layout of the house. Knew where the bedroom was. Knew where the children slept. Someone who could walk in, do what they came to do, and walk out without neighbors noticing anything unusual. Because seeing that person come and go wouldn't be unusual. If Spencer or Monique opened the door for someone at 3 a.m., we have to ask, what would make someone do that? Research on decision-making under duress shows a few patterns. 1. Trusted relationship. If it's someone you know well, family, close friend, you open the door, even at odd hours. You assume emergency, not danger. 2. Authority figure. If someone presents as police, medical, utility worker, people comply with requests, even when suspicious. We're trained to defer to authority. 3. Distress signal. If someone says, I need help, I've been in an accident, compassionate people open the door. Especially people who are caregivers by nature. For threat. If someone says, open the door or I'll hurt your children, parents comply. Immediately, without thinking. We don't know which, if any of these scenarios happened. We don't even know for certain that the door was opened voluntarily. But we know that parents make different decisions than non-parents. When you have children sleeping in the next room, you calculate risks differently. Maybe you open the door to make whoever's outside go away quietly. Maybe you step outside to talk so the kids don't wake. Maybe you trust someone you shouldn't because the alternative confrontation on your doorstep at 3 a.m. seems worse. The problem with this theory, the family says there's no one like that. No one with a grudge, no one with motive. But families don't always know what they don't know. The timing of an attack tells us about perpetrator priorities. 2 to 5 a.m. is the deepest part of night. Circadian research shows that's when human alertness is lowest. It's when most people are in REM sleep, harder to wake, slower to orient, Longer reaction time. From a perpetrator's perspective, it's optimal. Victims are vulnerable. Neighbors are asleep. Darkness provides cover for approach and exit. But it also requires planning. You have to be awake and alert when everyone else is asleep. You have to navigate in darkness. You have to know the layout of the house well enough to find the bedroom. That suggests this wasn't impulsive. Impulsive violence happens in the moment during an argument, when emotions peak. 2. The perpetrator had the patience to wait, to plan, to choose the right time. 3. They knew the victim's routine, knew they'd be home, knew they'd be asleep. All of that points to someone who had information, who observed, who thought it through. Which brings us back to the central question: who knew the Tepes well enough to know their routine, but was willing to kill them? And if no one knew them that well, how did someone gather that information? On January 5th, 1 week after the murders, Columbus police did something unusual. They released surveillance footage. It's just under 30 seconds long. Black and white. Timestamp between 2 and 5 a.m. on December 30th. A figure walks through an alley near the Tepe home. The alley is snow-dash covered. The figure moves slowly. They're wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up. Light-colored pants. Their head is bowed. Hands tucked into pockets. They walk like someone who's cold or weighted down by something. The police call this person a person of interest, not a suspect. Legally, that means we want to talk to you. We're not accusing you. But we'd very much like to know why you were walking through this alley at 3 a.m. on the night two people were murdered 50 feet away. The video went public. It was shared thousands of times. Columbus police asked for tips, and then silence. As of today, January 6th, no one has been arrested. No suspect has been named. That figure in the hoodie could be the killer, or a neighbor coming home late, or someone who has no idea they're even a person of interest. But here's what we know for certain. Someone walked through that alley during the murder window. And Columbus police think it matters enough to ask the public for help. Which means, after 1 week of investigation with all the resources of a big city police department, with forensic evidence from the scene, with footage from 24 cameras, they don't know who that person is. Or they do, and they can't prove it yet. Either way, the case is stuck. And then there are the cameras. In 2011, Weinland Park residents asked the city to install surveillance cameras at major intersections. They wanted safety. They wanted evidence if something happened. The city installed them. One camera sits at North 4th Street and East 8th Avenue, almost directly across from the Tepe home. Residents say there are more than 24 cameras in a 1-block radius. Ring doorbells, private systems, cameras everywhere. So when Spencer and Monique were killed, investigators had access to more footage than in most homicide cases. And yet, 1 week later, no arrests. That tells you something about the limits of surveillance. You can capture everything and understand nothing. Seeing isn't solving. Spencer and Monique died in the most watched neighborhood in Columbus. And we're no closer to understanding why. So that's where we are. 1 week after Spencer and Monique Tepe were killed in the home where they were married. Their children are with family. A GoFundMe has raised over $140,000 for their future. Hundreds of people have left flowers and candles outside the house. The family has released a statement. The community has held vigils. But the killer is still free. And the questions pile up. Columbus police are still calling this an active investigation. Detective Weiner and Detective Miller from the homicide unit are leading the case. The Franklin County coroner has ruled both deaths as homicides caused by gunshot wounds. But the final coroner's report with full autopsy and toxicology hasn't been completed yet. Police have declined to answer key questions: whether they've identified a suspect, whether they believe the couple was specifically targeted, whether there's an ongoing threat to the Weinland Park community. Their official statement, released on January 6th, reads, "We understand there are many questions and concerns regarding this heartbreaking event. Detectives are working tirelessly to resolve this case, and we will keep you informed as the investigation advances." Working tirelessly. That's what they say when they don't have anything concrete to share. The family has been more direct. Rob Misley, Spencer's brother-in-law, has served as the family's spokesperson. On January 5th, he told reporters, "We'd rather have the investigation done right instead of fast. We have full faith that investigators are looking at every angle before jumping to conclusions." And then he said something that matters. "This is not an episode of TV or a true crime podcast. This is a family. Hundreds and hundreds of people have been affected by this. That's a reminder for everyone consuming this story, including you, right now, that these are real people, not characters. Not a narrative to be solved and then discarded. Spencer and Monique are dead. Their children are orphaned. Their families are shattered. And somewhere, the person who did this is still walking around. The children are with relatives now. Rob Misley says they're doing well, considering. They're young, so they're not quite aware," he said. "They're getting all the love and attention they possibly can at the moment. They're 4 and 1. That means the younger child will have no direct memory of their parents. No memory of the house. No memory of what happened. The older child might remember fragments, sounds, feelings. Maybe the morning when no one answered, when she called for mommy and daddy. Or maybe not. Memory for is unstable. Sometimes that's a mercy, but someday they'll be older. Someday, someone will have to explain to them what happened. How their parents died. Why? And there may not be who to give them. That's what unsolved means. Not just that police don't have answers, but that these children may grow up never knowing who took their parents from them. Is that better or worse than knowing? There's no good answer. Spencer and Monique were married in 2021. They would have celebrated their 5-year anniversary this January. January 25th, probably, maybe the 27th. The family hasn't shared the exact date. It doesn't matter now. They didn't make it to 5 years. They made it to 4 years and 11 months. And then someone ended it. There's no symbolic meaning to that, no lesson. It's just the unfairness of it. They were so close to a milestone. And it means nothing in Weinland Park. People are scared. 1 week after the murders, neighbors still don't know if the killer is someone from outside the neighborhood or someone who lives among them. Police won't say if there's an ongoing threat. That silence breeds fear. A memorial has grown outside the Tepe home. Roses, sunflowers, teddy bears, candles. The kind of improvised shrine that appears when people don't know what else to do with their grief. And every time someone walks past it, they think, could I be next? That's what unsolved murders do to a community. They turn neighbors into suspects. They turn streets into crime scenes. They turn home into a place that doesn't feel safe anymore. And then there's the cameras. 20-some cameras in a one-block radius. Crime cameras installed specifically to make people feel safe. To catch criminals, to provide evidence. They captured everything and solved nothing. There's a person of interest on video. And that person is either the killer or a witness, or someone completely irrelevant who just happened to walk through an alley at the worst possible time. But we still don't know which. That's the thing about surveillance. It gives us the illusion of control. The illusion that if we just watch closely enough, we can prevent tragedy. We can solve crimes. We can make sense of chaos. But surveillance only shows you what happened. It doesn't tell you why, or who or what it means. Spencer and Monique died in the most watched neighborhood in Columbus. And 1 week later, the person responsible is still out there. Still free, still unknown. So here are the questions that remain. Who walked into that house between 2 and 5 a.m. on December 30th? Did Spencer and Monique know them? Or were they a stranger? Was this about them specifically? Or were they just in the wrong place? Why were the children left alive? What did those children see or hear in those hours before they were found? Will they ever remember? Or and if they will that knowing? What does justice even look like here? If someone is arrested, convicted, sentenced, does that give those children their parents back? Can you call it justice if it doesn't undo the harm? And what about the neighborhood? Can Weinland Park feel safe again while the killer is free? Spencer and Monique Tepe were murdered in the home where they were married. Their children survived, but survival isn't the same as being okay. And 1 week after their deaths, the person responsible is still out there, somewhere,